Hello, podcast listeners. First and foremost, thank you so much for listening to JJ Meets World. It's a great podcast. I love my co-host, Tucker. In fact, we're just about to celebrate a big milestone birthday for this guy. So sit back, relax, wish him a happy birthday, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World, where we cover everything from ruining your favorite movies all the way to your genetic information. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprain. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
All right, Tucker, I've got a game to play. Are you ready for this? So, you know our good friend, Will?
Yeah.
So Will and I were texting, and we came up with a game, and I'm going to tell you exactly what he said right off the bat, which he said, I don't want to play this game anymore.
So immediately
after 2 texts,
he wanted to stop.
Okay.
He's got a strong stomach lining.
He does have a strong stomach lining. So this game is using people who could actually have been cast in certain roles, recast some of the best performances of all time with someone who would have completely derailed and made this like a thing shitty. For example, imagine if they made if Kubrick made The Shining today and it was just a bunch of drone footage. So drone footage of the outside and drone footage of, flying down through doors that open on their own and then follow Danny on the carpet. And I was watching some drone footage in the mountains of Colorado, and I was like, oh, thank God that tool didn't exist, because there's something about like the slow, like it's weird to say this, but the slowness of like a helicopter track and like how high you have to be.
Yep.
And so the shot of the Torrance's car like moving along the mountain road has to be done from so high up so as you don't disturb the, what's on the ground. But in a world where drones are possible, you could have had it real low and then like the drone turn and then you see Jack Nicholson, in the car driving. It would have been just awful. And then he doubles back and ruins my day. But he goes, what if Steve Martin was replaced with Chevy Chase in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? And I said, I threw up in my mouth. Well played. Day's ruined for both of us. And so now it's a game. Tom Hanks replaced by Willem Dafoe in Saving Private Ryan.
I don't hate that. I think that would be an interesting movie. Yeah. That's an interesting suggestion.
Okay, but
that doesn't ruin it.
I think it does. I think Willem Dafoe is any of the other soldiers, but not the Tom Hanks part.
I don't agree with that.
I think that Willem Dafoe is a side guy. I don't think that he's the main operator.
So we're thinking like, imagine they shot Jurassic Park vertically on an iPhone 13.
Bingo. Here's another example. Instead of a sled, Rosebud is a Bible.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a solid one.
It really changes what that is, right? He says Julia Roberts plays Monster instead of Charlize Theron.
Oh. Again, meh. I don't think that ruins it. That doesn't, I think it needs to be sacrilegious almost, right?
Okay.
That's where it needs to get to.
Okay, so how about this? In Transformers, the voice of Optimus Prime is played by Chris Pratt.
Okay, yeah, that would be, that would be sacrilegious. That would be like, you have to be fucking kidding me.
I came up with another one that was Dom DeLuise is the voice of Gizmo in Gremlins.
I would still watch it, but I don't have the same attachment to Gremlins that you do.
I think that they wouldn't have been able to rein him in quite. Gizmo would have been doing like the it would have been too over the Bobby Moynihan and Dom DeLuise have some of the same energy.
It would be like if when they made the first Ninja Turtles movie, every time any character, foreground or background, jumped into the air, we heard a little spring boing noise from like a cartoon.
I actually that would at least let me know they're jumping.
I would murder someone if they changed reality and said, by the way, the only version you'll ever be able to see now is this one. I'd be like, what's your home address? Also, where does your family, are they all in this state? I'm going to hunt you down.
I would like to kill. Speaking of Gremlins had a great week with a random reference in a television show this week. Do you watch The Righteous Gemstones?
No.
You really should. I think you especially would love what goes on in The Righteous Gemstones. If you're not familiar with the show, it is about the 3 adult children of John Goodman, and John Goodman has started a mega church with his wife that became ultra popular in the 80s and 90s. And so it is a multi-million-dollar operation, and while there is faith involved in it, because they are a church and they do preach and stuff like that, these people are all horrible, right? They are all horrible, and it's all about the money and the business of salvation. So for example, in one of the seasons, they do this telemarketing thing where they sell Y2K survival buckets.
Oh, yeah, which is an actual thing.
And then, when Y2K doesn't happen, all the people feel like they were cheated. And, people who gave all their money to the church before Y2K, hoping for salvation when this happened. And, so, very scammy in a lot of ways.
Buckets of cheesy broccoli and rice is what you actually see.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, my God.
So, this is...
Fuck.
But also, the beginning of the 4th season, I think you might think is up there in one of the best episodes of television you've ever seen. And it's a total departure from what the rest of the show is to kind of set the foundation for what, this season is. And Bradley Cooper's in it. I mean, honestly, it is so good. It is just out of this world good. Anyway, they had a Gremlins reference this week, and it was such a deep cut Gremlins reference that I thought about writing David Gordon Green, who's the creator of this show and directed this episode. I was like, I need to tell him how good this was. There's a character who gets into an accident, and his wife, Judy Gemstone, who the actress who plays Judy she's also in Vice Principals, which shouldn't be surprising because it's the same. Right. It's like Jodie Hill and Danny McBride, but she is so good. She's so good because she plays this kind of crazy person, but she's got a vocal cadence. I can't even do an impression of it, but it's so good, and it makes her just seem crazier and crazier. She's in the state of Arrested Development and never got past 11 years old.
Okay.
So she's having to, and she's like the doctors are talking about, never walking again, and a chairlift, like old Mrs. Deagle in Gremlins. Which in Gremlins is this old woman who owns most of the town that they set up as a villain, and the Gremlins mess with her stair lift and it shoots her out of the house. But the fact, to not just say the old lady, in Gremlins, but to say old Mrs. Deagle, to name it, to have that straight up, I thought, oh, that's too good. Also, and because of that, it made me think of I haven't been to Joe Dante, the director of Gremlins, website in a while, and he started doing these auctions on his website, and I scored an amazing piece of cinema history in an auction. It is the actual press packet from when the movie Matinee came out, and Matinee, one of my all-time, I think that movie is friggin' perfect, and for movie lovers out there, it's just fantastic. But it's the full press packet because Joe Dante is notorious for keeping and filing everything.
Okay. I didn't know that. Oh, yeah. That's fascinating.
So
that's really cool.
In a lot of his movies, they have to make something, right?
Yep.
So, example, in Gremlins, the dad is an inventor, so they had to make all these set pieces like the Peltzer Peeler Juicer, or the Bathroom Buddy. And he would always keep something, and so he auctioned off the Peltzer Peeler Juicer. He goes, it's just been sitting in my garage for 15 years.
Sure.
And so Renfield is the name of his like website company, and you can buy autographs and stuff like that from him. And in this case, like he's moving through some stuff, including these press packets, and I'm like, this is piece of cinema gold. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited about that.
You just made me remember that at one point in time, the internet was made of websites.
Yeah.
And like people had their website, and you would go to their website. I think that needs to come back. I don't even think about the fact that someone I might be interested in has a website. Don't even
like their social media presence.
Don't even consider it for a second, right? And yeah, what a novel thing. I need to go look for websites today and go, what are some websites that I just don't even pay attention to the fact that it exists and something is going on there?
Every now and then, a website from yesteryear gets like a new, like a bright, shiny new light. And I remember maybe 10 years ago, someone's like, do you know that the official website for Space Jam is still up? And it still looked like a website from 1998.
Yeah.
You know, like those, it's like, here's the thumbnail, like here's some thumbnails you can download.
God, at that time, I mean, it dates us, but that it felt like entering a new dimension on some level, having the internet, right? It's this new world where you can connect at a level that just wasn't even considered possible. Like I remember how amazing caller ID seemed like.
Yeah.
Like, hey Brady, yeah, I knew it was you. We have caller ID. You know, like that was huge. That was fucking huge, and it existed for that, right? And now it would be odd to not know the number that's calling you, or you would actually be like, why is someone calling me?
Yeah.
Why if I'm getting a phone call, it's probably scam.
I mean, in all honesty, I don't ever answer a phone, like an unknown number nowadays. And you know what I really like is that my email is talking to my phone, so they go like could be potentially, you know, is B Martinson. Mm-hmm. I think okay, so this is the first time I've ever really thought about this, but was caller ID sexist? Like,
what do you mean?
So it's if like, you know, like what it always listed the male entity of the house, if I'm not mistaken. Unless like your grandma was the only person, and then it might say like Gordon Alice.
I think it would be, my recollection is that it was however it was registered in the phone book. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's basically like, and I think you had to submit your own registration to the phone book. If you got a new number, you would, I think you would have to like write in, okay, this is the address of this and this. So if it followed that sort of cultural protocol of, you know, to the address of Mr. and Mrs. Gordon, right, then maybe it would say, you know, Mr. Mrs. Gordon on the caller ID. I remember seeing the last name and being like, okay, I know. Well, and you would also see the phone number, right?
Yep,
So just seeing the phone number itself, for a lot of people, I know who that is. I recognize that number. Now the only numbers I know are mine and my sister's because they're one digit different.
Really?
Yeah, they are one digit. We got them, you know, at the same time, and we still each have the same phone number since we first got cell phones.
Interesting, Tucker.
Yeah. So I know hers.
You're just always ready.
And I know mine. That's it.
I can't even think of the prefix of your number. Like if
701?
No, that's the area code.
Oh, 793.
Is it 793?
Yeah.
I was going to say 491, so I was totally off. I believe that I don't know how many states are left, but North Dakota only one area code for the whole state. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite shirts of all time, I bought it at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center up near Washburn, North Dakota on Highway 83. And it was a little tiny blue state of North Dakota in the middle of a gray shirt, and it had a 701 in the North Dakota, and then below it said like one state, one area code.
Right.
And I thought that was mind-blowing when you think about it. Like when you think about it, there are cities that have multiple area codes.
Yeah, I guess what is the logic that goes into it? Is it population density?
I think it's truly the number of numbers that you're using within like something, because
so we just have the least amount of phone numbers.
Right,
basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because the area code means something, but also the prefix means something. Like the first three digits mean something as well.
We don't just have the least amount of phone numbers. We still don't have enough where there would be a reason to split up
Yeah.
the area code.
Bingo.
It feels like there would be a more geographic reason to, at minimum, the east side of the state and the west side of the state. You would think that there might be.
But
you're
that's where
closer to Montana, or you're closer to Minnesota.
That's where that's essentially where the prefix comes from.
I see.
Like,
okay,
people weren't being registered 306 prefixes in Williston.
Okay.
They were getting, like 512 prefixes.
Sure. Mine was registered to me in 2003. And so, I'm guessing they've run through all the 793s or something, or it's like, yeah, now there's no more. Don't numbers get reassigned sometimes?
I think that they do. I think for a long time they weren't reassigning cell numbers, but your house number, like if you got rid of that, could be reassigned to something else or a business. But I don't know, like the cell numbers must be. I mean, for example, my mom has now been gone for 10 years, and I wonder who has her cell phone number now, because it was a 238, so it was a prime. They considered those like prime numbers.
I wonder if there will ever be like a network of digital communication, right? Like just considering phones as one thing, any particular social media site is their own thing. I wonder if we'll ever have a specific network where the actual number address that's assigned to you would be too complex to actually remember and too hard to just guess with a random number generator, so that there's a specific way, like, oh, well, do you have my QR code address, right? Where the only way I could get it would be if I saw the image of it and did like a certain scan, because it has so many characters and end-to-end encryption, right? And then at that point, it's like, yeah, I can only get this if I'm like physically in the room with you in some way. And so that at minimum, I know if a call is coming on that network, it is more than likely someone who I have actually met and given it to. I wonder if we'll be able to develop a boundary, a disassociative boundary between those two.
I mean, I think that there's a real likelihood that we will get to the point of where it's all app-based calling, right? And so, like, you may have a cell phone from Verizon, but you're not really calling someone's phone number. You're calling you're dialing the account, and that way Verizon, sees all the traffic. And so if someone is making 60 calls every second, they're able to like dismantle that. I mean, and by the way, in that case, you have lost a huge leg of privacy, and but like. I almost wonder. I don't think people care about privacy anymore.
I mean, I'm thinking about it again because of 23andMe right now. And here's the thing that fucking sucks. It was like I was actually about to give them even more of my data.
What?
Because I had bought an upgrade, because when I had my DNA sequenced by them, it was previous chips or whatever. And so there was like a discount to upgrade to like the most latest one, which will give you, more granular detail, was basically the assumption. And so I had paid for the kit, and I'd gotten the kit, and I had just not done the spit. I just hadn't done it yet. And then they file for bankruptcy, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm out $80, right? But also, like, if I were to complete this now, is there anyone to receive it?
I mean,
can I get a refund on my $80, or would whoever buys it honor this thing, if I'm comfortable with whoever buys it, goes, okay, I'm comfortable with that. But then should I have been as blasé about this in the first place? I never really thought of, I didn't put emotional stock into the idea that, you're spitting into a thing and giving your data to a private organization. And so once it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands. I guess I'm so comfortable in my life that it's still easy to just assume it won't mean anything negative to me. But now I got to rethink that. And it's too late. It's already out there. You can go and have them delete it. Yeah. But what do you fucking know? There's no way to actually know. And the damage is probably already done.
I also
multiple security breaches in their time not being bankrupt.
I was gonna say, also before they went bankrupt, they already have utilized your information. It may not be labeled like T. Lucas or anything like that, but your information about your demographic has been sold to other companies for other purposes already.
Also, when did they know they were going to declare bankruptcy? Because this was only like a month prior to this that I bought this, and they were pushing that thing hard.
So the kits are still being sold.
Okay.
At the time of this recording, they're still being sold, and you can still spit into that and send it in.
Right.
And they're still in operation.
Okay.
And in fact, they would really appreciate that, because with the number of people deleting their information, this actually is saying like, hey, but listen, we've got more. Like, I mean, it would be, like this. Like
Their value goes down the more people delete their
correct.
data. Yeah.
Because you've got less to sell.
Yep.
It's like a furniture store who says we're going bankrupt. And people come in and just take a bunch of couches out of there and be like, well, this is my couch. And you go,
Yeah.
oh, shit.
I really think that, I think that there is a very plausible, solid chance that it will be immaterial to reach out to them and say, delete my data.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are operating at such a shady, unregulated level. It takes absolutely nothing for them to just handshake, not on paper, and go, hey, yeah, it's deleted from this database, but we didn't tell them about this database that's over here. And you'll still get that because they can't trace it. They won't be able to know that the information that you're getting is from this transaction. So I think it's like once it's out the door, it's out the door. You should assume it's the same as though you put a nude photo on the internet, right? It's like, it's out there somewhere now. It's unfortunate, but, it's out there.
Yeah, the cat is out of the bag, right? I never did 23andMe because somebody who I kind of trust as far as like tech wise told me like don't do it. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why? So many other people are doing it.
Right.
They can't screw over 20 million people.
And you're curious about, there's information you want, right? You're just curious to say what would happen. And that curiosity is genuine. But unfortunately, and I didn't see this at the time, I didn't respect this at the time, that there's no mechanism to protect your privacy.
Right.
At the same time. There's no HIPAA or whatever regulating that necessarily. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is something I'm not thinking of, but I don't. It doesn't sound like it.
So HIPAA only protects you from companies that
I was just throwing a regulatory term out.
I know, but that has come up. But HIPAA only protects you with companies that are healthcare based and are essentially regulated by the government.
I
right?
see.
And so
they're not a healthcare company,
right? So someone who does skincare products. Where they wear a lab coat when they come out and they help you with it. If you tell them your medical history and you say I suffer from psoriasis as well as, my mother died of, glaucoma, blastoma, whatever the eye cancer is that you can get that's horrible. They could put a file on you, but then turn around and then sell that to anybody. And they could sit at the top of Ulta and be like, you'll never guess what happened.
Right.
I find it to be very just interesting in so many ways. So this last week, we had a conversation on my radio show about 23andMe, and we had the North Dakota Attorney General's office on, and essentially said hey, what are you doing to help protect North Dakotans from this? And unfortunately,
they were nothing.
Well, yeah,
probably
they were like, you should have read the fine print. That was part of their deal. As they said, if we end up going bankrupt, we can sell any information.
We're not even going to pretend to try to protect you.
Yeah. And the question came up of well, why did 23andMe fail? Why did it not work? And my hypothesis on it is when 23andMe came out, they were the biggest dog in the pack. And there were a couple other ones, some that had even been there longer, but didn't do as good of a job marketing what they did.
Right.
And so 23andMe became the top entity. But when people see someone else making money, they go, well, we need to get it too. And I even know our local hospitals started offering genetic information services and things that they could provide using their already established network.
Yep.
And they were doing it at a lower cost because their infrastructure already exists. And then they can say, you don't have to send anything through the mail. You get to come right on in here. You get to come to our fun, sterile environment and spit into a tube here. And so
is that something we can do locally right now?
You can, but you
find it Essentia. Tell me how Irish I am.
Well, yeah. So and all they're doing is sending it to another company that they've contracted with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they can provide services like that to you locally. And I think of it sort of like this. When film was developed, it used to be that there were dark rooms all over. Monarch Photo and Fargo developed their own photos. So when you dropped it off, it never left that facility.
Yeah.
And then at one point, it became the thing where, okay, well, there's only a couple of these, and so we'll just contract. Like, you might drop it off at Walgreens, but it's actually going over to Monarch Photo.
You can still make money in a service without actually providing the service itself.
Right, bingo, exactly. And so I think that there's a real world where 23andMe, like, the problem is that other people started taking bites, and just like the compies in Jurassic Park: The Lost World, you don't need a T-Rex bite out of you. You need 1,000 little bites.
Well, not just that they failed, but that they are struggling to sell because they've been trying to sell before bankruptcy, which means that their database already was not valuable enough.
Right.
Right? Like, a lot of the data that you could probably scrape from their database, they can probably infer using other databases they already have access to, right? So even if you don't have my DNA saying that I have psoriasis, you do have my health insurance financial transactions or whatever when I went and I bought skin cream or I went and I bought something over the counter maybe, so I paid with it on a debit card, right? That information is all bought and sold all the time. And maybe they don't have your name, but you are identified by the system.
Yeah, you are the product now.
Yep. And so if the goal is to advertise to you, they already have a lot of different data points to cross-reference. So I'm guessing it's just like, like everyone found out it would be cheaper to just make their own database than to buy ours. So they might just be SOL. Like unless, because like the branding isn't really valuable at this point, especially when you go into bankruptcy. So any other organization that might be dealing with DNA, do they really, what is the data is still worth something, but it's not worth in the billions at this point. Or like the single digit billions, which I know is a lot, but it's not what they built the company with.
If you really want we talked about websites earlier, right? Where you go and you go to a website and it's devoted to a single person or a business or something that you're passionate about. If you really want to see what you can accomplish as a human being, let me give you my login into Instagram, and not for you to look at the stuff I've been looking at, but you browse Instagram the way you'd normally browse Instagram for an afternoon, right? And then I'm going to give it to somebody else. And within a week, I've given it to 5 people to browse however they want to browse. Same thing. Open my Amazon and look for the things you'd normally shop for, anything like that. And it's going to break the algorithm that they've already sent to you, as long as you are seeking out the things that you like and not just consuming the things that they are already sending to me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so,
because they think it's you.
Right. So
suddenly JJ's interested in deck chairs. It's like, no, Natalie was.
I actually think this could be $1 billion disruptor idea. It is an app that has 20,000 search words, and all you do is you let it run for an hour every day, and it opens every app that has something searchable in it for you, and it searches for things so that it breaks what your natural thing is, because you
poisons the well.
It does. It poisons the well, and then you end up finding the things that you had never seen before or thought that you were going to have.
Yeah.
It's the Sky Mall.
That's interesting. I think we're going to see that tension continue. On one side will be us poisoning the well, and on the other side will be more and more advanced AIs that are picking out patterns that we're not even noticing. But you're right. Like the data pool must at some point become less valuable in some way.
Yeah.
In some way. And if our only way to do it is to go upstream and drop some lie in there, maybe we do have to.
I think part of the big...
I have no idea if that would actually poison a water stream.
Lie?
I would assume.
I mean, anything.
Suddenly,
anything, technically anything other than just water itself poisons the stream.
But we have a big cement truck filled with peanut butter.
Yeah.
And it's chunky peanut butter.
How many people are allergic to peanuts?
There you go.
Kill them. Kill them all. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review.
You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information.
My new website is going to be called 22andYou, where you provide us some of your DNA and I tell you who you would be best at on the dating game.